Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made a beautiful yellow springy dress. Yes, even though it's still the middle of winter here, I sewed yet another spring project, but I'm super excited to show you how I made this project today. For today's project, I used this pattern right here. This is the McCall's 8036, and I made this view A. The fabric that I chose to use for this project is a yellow cotton and polyester blend jacquard fabric. I got it from a seller on Etsy. Now, last year, a Canadian designer that I follow named Eliza Faulkner, I'll link their Instagram below, they had created this beautiful spring dress using this yellow jacquard fabric, and I was so in love with the dress, I really wanted to recreate something similar. So I spent a long time last year hunting down this fabric on the internet, and this fabric that I found on Etsy was the closest thing that I could find to what they had used. It was on the pricier side. I will say that it does feel a lot more like polyester than cotton, which I don't always love polyester and I don't regularly buy it, so that's a little bit annoying because I don't think this dress will be super breathable, but I'm still really happy with the fabric. And the original dress that they made had a gathered neckline with puff sleeves that had a tie on the side and then a long flowy skirt. And it was so beautiful. Originally, I wanted to try and copy the dress. I know there's some gray area in terms of, copying someone's design. It's never nice to flat out copy someone else's design. So I wanted to steer away from that a little bit. So I had the fabric and I landed on this pattern because it still gave off the same vibe, I think, as those dresses did, because this dress also has the puff sleeves, which is nice. But instead of having the gathered neckline, it is a wrap dress, which I love wrap dresses. And then it has the ruffles on the bottom, and the ruffles are such a cute detail that this pattern and this fabric would go together perfectly. So I did a little bit of a different style for today's video. Rather than filming a lot of the sewing process, I filmed a lot of short vlog style clips of me talking you through what I was doing. So do let me know down below what you think of today's video, if you like the style or if you prefer the style of my other videos more. Without further ado, if you're interested in seeing how I made this dress, please keep watching. Okay, I just finished cutting out my pattern pieces for this yellow dress, and this is McCall's 8036 that I'm working on. It's my first time making it. There are more pattern pieces than I expected, so I think I was kind of going into this thinking it would be a quick sew, but it's probably not going to be, at least not for me. But I'll show you my pattern pieces now. I'm done cutting out all my pattern pieces. I have them all piled up here. A couple of these pieces got interfaced, so piece 11, I did the interfacing on that, and then piece 10 as well is here, and I did the interfacing on these two as well. None of the other ones have interfacing. And now I'm going to get started on sewing the pleats in the bodice. So here's the front bodice piece, and you can see that there is a pleat at the top of this bodice. Now I marked the edges here on my fabric with my erasable marker thing, but I didn't mark the lower edges of the pleat yet. I'm going to mark these parts with tailor's tacks. It's a technique I learned from the Love to Sew podcast, which, if you're not aware, just basically involves using a piece of thread to mark something on the front of your pattern, because then when you're done using the marking, you can just take the thread out and then you'll be sure that your pattern will be unmarked. I think certain types of fabric this wouldn't be the best choice for, like a really nice silk or satin or something. You might see that pin mark. For this jacquard, Frenchies come for me, but for this fabric, it should work fine using the tailor's tacks, and the hole will just get lost. So I'm gonna do that because I don't trust my water erasable marker at all. So let's do that now. Now, if I was organized, I could use some leftover thread from other projects to do this. However, I'm not organized, so I'm just gonna cut some thread from the spool. What's neat about this technique is you can actually put your needle right through the paper through to the fabric, and then you're getting an exact marking without having to fumble around lifting the paper up and trying to make sure you've got it in the right spot. So I really love this tailor's tacks technique. So super close up here, but that's basically what it ends up looking like, is you get this nice little piece of thread sticking out, and that's marking the mark that you wanted to make on your fabric. So in terms of working with this fabric, it's a little bit annoying to sew because it's a jacquard. There's two kind of layers, and it's a little bit annoying to sew because it can keep getting caught. So I tested out my walking foot and I found that the raised fibers in the jacquard design were getting caught on the walking foot. What I ended up doing is I eased up on my presser foot pressure, so it's a little bit lighter than it was before. I had to increase my tension a little bit. So I'm sewing with my non-stick Teflon foot. I don't use this guy as much as I should. It's working really well to avoid getting snagged on these finer fibers that are raised from the design. So this is the setup that's currently working for me right now. Okay, so I finished doing the front bodice pieces. I'll show you what I did. So I sewed up the pleats. So the pattern instructions say to match these circles and these circles, and then you stitch along this line. So I did that here. You can see I sewed between these two circles, and then on the back, you press it flat so that this extra bulk is distributed on either side. And then I just stitched across the top. So it ends up laying kind of like this. So I also sewed up the darts in my back bodice. Here is what the back bodice looks like. It has these two darts. They're actually super tiny darts. If you look from the inside, it's about 1 inch at the bottom. They're so small that when I was sewing them, I was kind of like, what's the point of even having these, because they're so small. But I think it'll look good. One of my darts turned out really well, nice and flat. This one's a little bit wonky, but I think I can press it out to look really nice. So I sewed the two darts in that part, and now I'm moving on to the skirt. So for the skirt, this here, the big piece is the back skirt piece. And then I have these two pieces on either side. And then I'm just pinning these front skirt pieces at the side seams to the back skirt piece. So you can see that this is going to be the curved hem in the front, and this is where the ruffles are going to go. Now, I'm a little bit worried because this is super short, and I thought it was short when I was cutting it out, but I was like, oh, you know, you never really know when you're cutting things and there's gonna be ruffles on it. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm just like, oh my God, it's so short. I feel like I should have lengthened it, but I was a little bit too lazy because if I had lengthened the skirt, would have had to kind of change the length of the, I would have had to change the length of the ruffles as well. And that's fine, but I'm just a little bit too lazy. So crossing my fingers that this will be an okay length on me. I'm 5'6", so I'm like exceptionally average. So hopefully it fits. I did read a review online from a girl who's 5'3", and she said she felt like it was the perfect length on her and she wouldn't want to go any shorter, so we will have to see. But yes, next step will be sewing up the side seams of the skirt, and then I will get started on the ruffle. So while my bodice was in the wash, I sewed the side seams of the skirt together. I finished my seam with a pine leaf stitch, which is a finishing stitch that my old Kenmore machine has. It's kind of similar to a serging stitch actually, so I don't commonly use these stitches. I usually just finish with a zigzag stitch, but this fabric is really prone to fraying, so I wanted to take the time to do the nicer seam finish. So this is what the pine leaf stitch looks like. You can see my original stitching line on the left, and then I did the pine leaf stitch just to the right of it. And here is my skirt piece. So this is the back piece of the skirt, and this is the front piece of the skirt that I've sewn on either side. I have pressed it, the seams, and they look pretty good. But one of my pet peeves about working with polyester is it just doesn't press the best. So I'm debating if I should top stitch along here to keep these seams really neat. I might do that. For now, I'm just thinking about it. So I did also kind of try on the skirt, like I held it up to my natural waist and wrapped it around, and the front is so short. So at this point, I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be super short on me, but we've made it this far, so I'm just going to push through. I'm going to work on the ruffles next, get those on the skirt, and that should give me a better idea of the length of it. But I think I can say for sure that this dress is going to be one that I wear with like bike shorts underneath because it's going to be super short. So I'm going to put the bodice together now. I'm just laying my front bodice piece on my back bodice piece. They're right sides together. So I've just matched my notches here at the top and then at the side seams as well. And I'll pin both of these front bodice pieces on and stitch those on now. So I have to say I'm making faster progress on this dress than I thought I would. I'm a very slow sewer. I don't know why, it just takes me a long time to finish anything. So I'm really excited that project is going fast so far, and I think it looks pretty good. The only iffy thing will be the skirt, but other than that, I'm really happy with it so far. So I will show you the bodice when it's all done. So update here, I've got myself a bodice and I've got myself a skirt, and I'm getting really excited seeing these two pieces laid out beside each other. So I think the seams are pressed enough for my liking. So next will be the ruffle, which I find a little bit intimidating, but I'm also excited to see that portion of the dress. So I'm going to get started on the ruffle now. Hey guys, so it's the next day and I'm still working on my dress here. Yesterday night I put together the pieces of the two ruffle sections, the upper and lower ruffle. I also just sewed in my gathering stitches. I sewed 2 lines of gathering stitches on the top ruffle. So here are my 2 rows of gathering stitches on the top ruffle. And for the bottom ruffle, I've just started the process of doing a hem. I'm just going to turn it over once, stitch, and then turn this over a second time, just to have a neat narrow hem. So I'm just working on that, but this bottom ruffle is super duper long, so I think it's going to take me a little while just to do the hem. So I think it's going to take me a lot of this evening just to get that hemmed and get the basting stitches in and everything like that. So I'm just planning on spending the rest of my afternoon working on these 2 ruffles. Hopefully I could get them attached to the dress today, but I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself. I'm just going to take my time so I get a nice finish on the bottom hem. Hey guys, it's later on in the evening now, hence my comfy outfit. I'm just working on pressing my finished hem. So I finished hemming the bottom of the lower ruffle. So I'm just steaming the hem with my iron now so it lays more flat. I was debating how I should hem the bottom because I don't have a serger, so typically I would do a double fold hem, but this fabric is pretty bulky, and so I was worried the hem would end up being a bit bulky, and I was right, it is a little bit on the bulky side, but I think it's going to add, well, I hope it's going to add some structure to the ruffle and kind of emphasize the ruffliness. Here's my double folded hem. It looks pretty bad from the inside, to be honest. This fabric was pretty thick and there's 2 layers to it, so it's pretty hard to work with, but it looks pretty decent from the right side here. So just gonna go along with my iron and use the steam to help relax the hem a bit. And then you can see what that does is it just helps it lay a bit more nicely and it looks more relaxed. So I think this is gonna work out well. And then when I'm done with this, I'm gonna start sewing the ruffles together and then sew them onto the skirt. So that will be really exciting. So this is where I ended off yesterday afternoon. I finished gathering this bottom ruffle. You can see the hem turned out really nicely, and it's pinned here to the top ruffle all the way the length across. And you can see that the bottom ruffle actually starts part of the way down on the top ruffle. So that's all pinned and ready to sew. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew that ruffle on now. Hey guys, a little bit of an update for you. I finished sewing the bottom ruffle onto the top ruffle. I also did a zigzag stitch in the seam allowances. I trimmed off the extra, and now I'm just pressing the seam allowances up towards the top ruffle. I'll go back in after with my steamer and try to steam the ruffle again so it's nice and fluffy. But I thought it was important to get the seam allowances pressed up because the fabric is pretty stiff, especially where I have multiple layers stitched together, so I want the ruffle to lie nice and flat. So this is how it's looking. This is the bottom ruffle, and here's the top, which I haven't gathered yet, but I do have my basting stitches sewn in. And so I'm just pressing it from the back here, and I'm just going all the way across and pressing the seam allowance up towards the top ruffle. So the last thing I had to do with the ruffle here was just to hem this edge of the upper ruffle that doesn't overlap with the bottom one. So on the inside you can see what it looks like. I have my seam where I sewed the two ruffles together, and then here I just did a double turned hem the same way I did this one, and that was pretty quick and easy. So I'm officially ready to pin my ruffle onto my skirt pieces. This project has honestly been a bit of a roller coaster for me so far. When I first saw the envelope, I was thinking, okay, this is, a pretty simple pattern, shouldn't be a big deal, can kind of be a quick sew that I can get done. Then I opened the envelope, I saw the pattern pieces, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take forever. And then I started sewing, and then once again I was like, oh no, this is easy, I'm getting so much done so fast. And then we got to the ruffle, and I was back to like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take forever. So, bit of a roller coaster, but I'm honestly enjoying sewing this one so much. I'm going to gather it, each of these pieces between the dots that I'd marked out on the skirt piece earlier. So I finished gathering and pinning my ruffle pieces to the skirt piece. And so I've done this right sides together all the way around, and I had to gather my basting stitches to ensure that the ruffles would fit around the skirt. So I did that, and it's all fitting really well. So I'm ready to take it over to my sewing machine. Because it's all pinned now, I can kind of get a bit of a preview of what it's gonna look like here. And I'm getting really excited to see the finished product. Once I've pinned it on, I'm gonna kind of hold it up to my waist to see what the length is looking like, and hopefully it will cover everything that needs to be covered, but we'll see. Hey guys, I just finished up my work day for the day, so you know what that means. It is time to sew, and I did actually get a little bit of sewing done on my lunch break today as well, so I'll show you where I'm at with the dress. Okay, so this is the dress as of right now. As I showed you guys last night, I got the ruffles sewn on and they look really nice and tidy from the inside. So then today at lunch, I worked on my facing. For the facing, it was 3 pieces. So I had this piece on each side of the neckline, and then there was a curved piece that goes along the top of the neckline here. And these pieces also have interfacing on the back. So I sewed these pieces right sides together. I pressed it, and then I understitched the facing to the seam allowance there. You can see that understitching on the inside, and it looks really neat and tidy. I've tried it on. The last couple things I have to do for the facing are I need to finish the edge here, and then I also just need to finish these pieces at the waistline. So this piece of the facing will just get tucked under like that, and then I can stitch in the ditch to secure it to the waistline so there's a nice neat finish on the inside. So once that's done, the last step will be to move on to the sleeves. So I'll get started on that. I am a little bit worried that the puffy sleeves might be a lot with the frilly skirt, but we're just gonna have to see how it looks. If I don't love the sleeves, I can always modify them so there's something a little bit more simple. And then the very last step will be the ties. So this isn't a true wrap dress, it's kind of a faux wrap dress. So what happens is there's a tie on the inside, so that helps to keep the inside piece farther over across your waist. So what that's going to do is help actually the skirt covering where it needs to cover. So I'll put that ribbon piece in for the inside tie. The outside method isn't a tie, it's in the instructions it's written as either a hook and eye or some sort of snap closure, so I'll get started on that. And then you sew up a sash which you just tie around the waist, and that kind of gives it the look of a faux wrap dress. Hey guys, just wanted to film a little update on the dress that I'm working on right now. So I think it's been a while since I've updated you. I was away last weekend and it's currently a Saturday evening. I was out all day today, so I'm home now. I'm just relaxing and I want to get sewing and get this dress finished up. So since I last updated you, I've gotten a lot of work done on the sleeve, so I'll show you how I did that now. So unfortunately, I missed out on filming a lot of the sleeve, but to give you an idea, this is the sleeve piece itself. Here's the top, and I cut it on here for the shorter view of the sleeve. You can see the top of the sleeve has these 6 pleats, and it's a really interesting design. Like when I first pulled out this sleeve, I thought it looked really wonky, but then I just took a closer look at it and read the instructions and it makes sense. So essentially on these pleats, they want you to match these small circles to the large circles. So that's what I did. Yeah, so for the pleats, I just took my time and I used my water erasable marker, and I just took my time marking out the pleats and their placement on the sleeve pieces. And then I also just carefully pinned the pleats together, and I used my iron to press. I pinned and then I basted the pleats together. Here's the shoulder part of my sleeve piece. You can see that how it works is at the top of the shoulder there's this one larger pleat, and then on each side I have these 2 smaller pleats. And what these instructions asked me to do was to press the fabric of the pleat along the line with the small circles and bring that folded fabric over to the line with the big circles, and then to baste down. You can see my markings are still there because I haven't washed this piece yet. So all of my pleats are basted down right now, and then I've also basted across the top as well, so they'll stay in place. Now, I was a little confused because the instructions don't specifically say to remove the basting stitch of the pleats, but I'm gonna assume that's what they want us to do because otherwise I think the sleeve just looks really flat. So I'll leave the basting stitches in for now while I'm sewing the sleeves to the dress, just to help keep everything nice and neat. But then I do think at the end, the idea is that the basting stitches will be removed. So after I did the pleats, I sewed the underarm seam of the sleeves right sides together. I finished my edges and then I pressed the seam. So next will be to gather the bottom of the sleeve and make that little cuff that the sleeve has at the bottom. So I'm going to get started on gathering the bottom of the sleeves now. So the sleeve saga continues. You can see I've attached the cuff piece here to the gathering at the edge of this sleeve, and then I finished it with a zigzag stitch and trimmed off the seam allowance. I pressed my seam so it's nice and flat. And then what I did is, rather than just trying to press this fabric over 5/8 of an inch and pressing it because it doesn't press that well, I sewed a stitch at 5/8 seam allowance, and then I turned my fabric in at that stitch line. I then stitched very close to where I had turned it and trimmed off the seam allowance, and that gave me a really nice neat finish, as you can see here. So the final step will be to form the cuff by turning this folded edge over to the inside, and then I will stitch in the ditch from the outside, and I should end up with a narrow cuff about this wide. So I'll do that for both of my sleeves, and then the sleeves will be done and ready to attach to the dress. Update on the sleeves, I finished sewing the cuffs of the sleeves, and this is what the finished result looks like. It's not as perfectly neat as I would have hoped because this sleeve in particular took me like 5 different tries, and I kept getting this waviness in the fabric. I tried to press it out so it's looking better, but the fabric was really wavy. Funny enough, this other one didn't give me the same issue. So I've gone ahead and sewn 2 layers of basting stitches, and now I'm ready to ease the sleeves into the bodice, and then I can stitch them on. And I'm really close to being done this dress. So I finished easing in my sleeve here, and I've pinned it in. And I think one of the keys for doing set-in sleeves is just to really take your time. So I sewed 2 gathering stitches all the way around my sleeve, and I took my time matching up my notches on each side, as well as matching up my circle to my shoulder seam up here, and just gathering and easing the sleeve to fit properly. It makes a really big difference. So now I'll baste it on with a long basting stitch, try it on to make sure it looks good, and then if I'm happy, I will stitch it on and finish this seam allowance. So my sleeves are attached. I did have quite a bit of trouble attaching the sleeves. When I first attached the sleeves, I just basted them loosely so that I could remove them if I had any issues, and thank goodness I did that. So when I first tried on the dress with the sleeves basted on, they were just really tight against my arm. And the other issue was that the shoulder seam was starting a little bit far down for my liking. And this is kind of random, but a pet peeve of mine with puff sleeve garments is like when the puff sleeve starts further down. I just think it ends up looking so weird. So I did take a little bit off at the shoulder of my bodice so that the sleeve would sit higher there. And I think all of my fiddling was worth it. I probably ended up doing this like 4 times. But I finally just got it done. I basted the sleeves on, checked the fit, and then I just stitched them on and finished the seams. So she's looking good here. So like I said, I just finished attaching my sleeves. But as you can see, I do have a lot of basting stitches to remove here. So I have the basting stitches for the pleats themselves. I do have some basting stitches that ended up being outside of my seam allowance, and the reason for that is I decided to sew the sleeves on with roughly a ½ inch seam allowance instead of 5/8, so that I could just have, you know, that little bit of extra room in the sleeve that I really needed. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to remove those basting stitches now. I've attached these ties, so I attached one at the left front of the bodice. The other one is on the inside at the right side seam of the dress at the waist, so those will tie on the inside of the dress, which I like because it helps to keep the dress more stable. So I just tried it on and I marked here where I need to put my hook and eye closure. So it will close up like this. I'll put my hook here and my eye here. And then I also tried it on with the bra that I normally wear, and I marked these 2 marks here. So that's where these pieces come together when I have the dress on, and I'm going to put a little snap closure on there too to help keep the top from gaping when I wear it. So I'm finally in the home stretch. I should finish this dress in the next 15 minutes, and then I will show you when I'm all done. So I'm done my work on this yellow spring dress, and I'm so happy with how this dress turned out. There's a lot of things that I love about this pattern and some things that maybe I would change next time I make it. So in terms of sizing, I usually size 1 size down for McCall's patterns because I find they can come up very large. So my body measurements correspond perfectly with the body measurements for a size 14 with McCall's. But I decided to sew a size 12, and I'm so happy I did. I think it fits perfectly, and I even think with the wrap style I could have gotten away with a 10. So I would also recommend you look at the pattern pieces, measure them, because you might not be the size that it says on the envelope. So first of all, the things that I love about this dress, I love the ruffles so much. They were really challenging to sew because especially the bottom ruffle was really, really long, since ruffles are usually at least 1.5 to 2 times longer than the fabric that they're being attached to because they need to be gathered up. So the ruffle itself was very long, so I wouldn't say I loved the process of the ruffles, but I loved them when they were done. So I love that aspect. I really like the wrap front in the dress. I'm kind of 2 minds about it. I think it fits really nicely when it's done, but I do have another wrap dress pattern. It's an older pattern, I think from a few years ago. In the front of that pattern, instead of having pleats at the shoulders, it just has normal princess style darts. And I do really like the way that princess style bodice fits, so I think if I made this dress again, I might just leave out those pleats and instead make a wrap style bodice that has the princess darts, because I just think that gives a really nice fit. So things I might change next time, first of all, the length. I feel like I talked about the length so much throughout this video. When all was said and done with the 2 ruffles, I think the dress is just long enough. I can wear it out. But when I was filming the try-on clips for you guys, I was wearing a slip dress underneath, and I was kind of like twirling around and dancing, and just regularly you could see the slip underneath. So I do think if I was gonna make it again, I would add at least 3 or 4 inches. Then it would still have that short, like cute look, but it wouldn't be like so short that I'm always wondering if it's flipping open. I like that this dress has an inside tie, so when you're putting it on, The left side ties against the right waistline with a tie on the inside, and then the right side closes with a hook and eye closure. Honestly, I prefer just a traditional wrap style dress because those style of dresses are really adjustable if your body is changing, if you're gaining or losing weight, or even just throughout the course of the day. If you want to tighten or loosen the dress, you have a little bit less flexibility when it's this kind of faux wrap dress with this hook and eye closure. Of course, you could always move the hook and eye if you need it smaller or larger, but it's not quite as handy as a traditional style wrap dress where you can just throw it on and tie it based on how your body is that day. So in terms of the sleeves are really cool. They have 5 pleats, which gives them a nice puffy shape. So it's just something a little bit different than your classic puff sleeve, which is just kind of gathered along the top. And they do look really cool. I will say, I do think they're kind of a lot for this dress. There's a lot going on already. Like, I chose a kind of bolder fabric, there's the ruffles, like there's already a lot of focal points in this dress, so I don't think it necessarily needed the puff sleeves. I took a few pictures of the dress before I'd finished the neckline and added the sleeves. I'll put it up on the screen now just to give you an idea of what it looks like sleeveless. I think it looks really nice without the sleeves, and I might take my sleeves off at some point in the future, but I worked really hard on getting them right, so I'll leave them on for now. Let me know down below what your opinion is on the sleeves of this dress. So what I did do is I added a small plastic snap, the ones that are very small and lightweight, to the front wrap style of the dress, just right about here where the 2 front pieces cross over, just to keep it closed, because I'd noticed that it was one of those wrap dresses where when I bent over, the top just fell completely, and I obviously didn't want that. So adding that snap was super quick and easy, and that's just a great hack in general for wrap dresses. If you find they're always opening, those lightweight clear plastic snaps are a great tool, and because they're plastic, you don't have to worry about them rusting and ruining your fabric if they get wet. They're lightweight, and they also blend in with the fabric, so I was really happy with that. So I haven't had the chance to wear this dress out yet. It is really springy. It's definitely a lot, but I might wear it to like a brunch or like afternoon drinks on a patio. It would also be a super cute Easter dress as well. If you want to get really dressed up for Easter, I think it would be perfect for that. So please let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this dress, and also let me know what you've been sewing so far this year. I would also love to know. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you like videos like this, please do subscribe to my channel because I would love to have you here. I've noticed a lot of new subscribers recently, so thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed and left me a comment. It really means a lot. All right, take care, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye for now.